Today's horrific recapitation of Dolls is the story of a young girl that finds refuge in an old mansion and discovers the elderly owners are magical toy makers. Our movie begins with some 80s hitchhikers named Isabel and Enid being nearly run down by a miserable and entitled woman named Rosie.
Baby, you almost hit them.
You want to go back and try a second time?
As she drives, she is met by a storm that's even more ominous than her angry scowl. She stops abruptly by a flat tire and gets stuck in a mud puddle.
Well,
Okay.
Her husband David tries to push the car, but ends up just getting splattered with mud. We then learn that the little girl in the backseat of the car is his daughter Judy.
Mommy says it's not nice to swear. Mommy says...
Well, Mommy's not here now.
But
Judith,
Rosemary,
that's Mama Rosemary.
you're not my mother.
Thank God.
They realize that their car is stuck for good and decide to walk to a nearby house for help. Judy is carrying her favorite teddy bear, which annoys Rosemary, and she throws it deep into the woods. Judy daydreams that her bear comes to life and attacks and kills Rosemary and then her father. But sadly, it was just her imagination. They approach the door and Rosemary begins to rant. David snaps back, but then quickly backs down.
Suppose we're trapped here. Suppose
You shut up.
What?
I said I suppose they shut up this place because of the storm.
They find an opening into the house and break in to avoid the rain.
And breaking and entering.
Who's going to arrest us out here, Count Dracula?
Judy hears and sees a tiny being. The owner of the home greets them with a gun, then invites them upstairs to get warm. As they walk through the house, the little girl notices a room filled with dolls. Very creepy dolls that giggle from behind the closed doors. As the adults talk amongst themselves, they learn that the owner of the home is a toy maker. He notices that the imaginative little girl doesn't have a doll, and he gifts her a unique jester named Mr. Punch.
Okay, Judy.
Isabel, Enid, and a man named Ralph bust into the home soaking wet. The toy maker offers to let them stay for the night. Later that night, Isabel and Enid discuss their plan to rob Ralph of his money and his car. Ralph hears giggles coming from his room and runs to catch up to the toy maker and Judy, and end up in the toy maker's workshop filled with toys. Ralph reminisces about his father and the stories he told him. The toy maker's wife drops off clean towels for Enid and Isabel as they discuss how they plan to rob the toy maker of all the unique toys. One of the girls wanders in the dark looking for antique toys and hears their giggles. Meanwhile, Judy entertains herself by reading Hansel and Gretel to Mr. Punch. They decide to go to the kitchen for a drink. The hitchhiking thief ends up in a room and gathers things to steal, but is almost given away when a music box begins to play on its own multiple times. She then is attacked from behind and rammed into the wall. Judy comes across her in the hallway, but she is dragged away by elves. Judy tries to tell her father, but he doesn't believe her and yells at her for lying. We then see Ralph in his bed, creeped out by the clown on his nightstand. Judy sneaks into his room and startles him. She tries to tell him about the girl being hurt by the elves, but he doesn't believe her either until he sees the blood on her slippers. Judy takes Ralph to where she thinks it happened, but they get separated. He then turns and gets hit by Judy opening a door. They find a trail of blood and follow it to a door and a drafty staircase which leads to the attic. The hitchhiking thief is tied up, but they don't see her. Ralph is then tripped by dolls and falls down the stairs. Ralph beats on the door to try to tell someone what happened and wakes the rest of the guests. The other hitchhiker accuses Ralph of hurting her friend, then Judy's dad accuses him of being a pervert. Judy insists the little people are to blame. Ralph realizes that he's been bit. He thinks it was a rat, but Judy insists there was no rat, only dolls. Judy runs off when her father tells her she can't stay with Ralph. He threatens to destroy Mr. Punch and is bitten. He then decides to burn him, and Mr. Punch disappears. Ralph finds a toy maker and tries to tell him about the girl, but the toy maker tells him he spilled red paint that he was using to touch up some of the older doll's cheeks.
Paint? You spilled paint?
Yes, I do some of my best work at night.
Meanwhile, the hitchhiker's friend paces and her radio mysteriously falls and breaks. Ralph cleans the blood off his ankle as Judy sits with him. Judy alludes she knows what is happening, but Ralph doesn't understand. Mr. Punches then tells him, deep down inside, you know.
Deep down inside, you know.
The evil stepmom is alone in bed and is greeted by an army of angry dolls under her covers that brutally attack her. She goes to Judy's room and is greeted with more creepy, angry dolls, to which she decides to jump out the window to escape them. The other half of the hitchhiking duel goes in search of her friend and sees the lady of the house pushing a baby carriage with a doll in it. The house is drafty and her candle keeps blowing out. She heads to the attic. She finds Isabel, who is now a doll. She is lassoed by a doll and lights him on fire, and then is attacked by a horde of dolls and lights another on fire. She whips them with her belt and kicks them to reveal that under their porcelain faces is an even scarier interior. She then is met by soldier dolls.
Okay, soldier boys, come and get it!
That shoot her, firing squad style. The last thing she sees is her lighter go out. Judy's dad gets into bed with what he thinks is his wife. He smells a funk and decides to take a shower. Ralph and Judy look for the little people. They find a door that seems locked but then opens mysteriously. It leads to a room full of dolls. The door slams behind them. Ralph finds a light by running into it.
Oh, here it is. Oh.
The dolls giggle and more when Ralph's back is turned. When he realizes the dolls are alive, he freaks out.
Yeah? Well, the hell with them! Let's go!
Ralph kicks them and stomps on them, making them very angry.
Oh, I'm offending the toys?
And they all begin to attack with hammers and knives. Judy gets them to stop.
Leave him alone!
Temporarily. Judy's dad returns to bed and finds his wife dead, mutilated body. He thinks Ralph did it and angrily runs to find him.
That psychotic piece of shit!
The dolls decide Ralph is a kid in disguise and release them from the room. Judy's dad finds Ralph and attacks him. Judy tries to stop him and he pushes her away. He is then attacked by Mr. Punches. The dolls drag Ralph and Judy away as Mr. Punches and Judy's dad battle it out. Sadly, Judy's dad destroys him with a swift hammer slam. The toy maker and his wife enter the room and see the mess David has made. The toy maker explains that he failed the test he gives all his visitors and says he has to start over. He calls the lady of the house a witch, to which she replies,
He figured it out.
A lucky guess, that's all.
David starts to feel queasy and begins to transform into Mr. Punch. As the sun rises, Judy and Ralph wake from their sleep. The toy maker explains they got Ralph's car out of the mud and tells them that they were knocked unconscious. The toy maker tells Judy her father left without her and reads her a note stating he was sorry he was not a good father and that Rosemary and him were leaving so she could happily live out her life with her mother, and leaves her money for a plane ticket back to Boston.
Some people just aren't cut out to be daddies.
The toy maker then tells Ralph that the two girls he was with went with Judy's father. Ralph and Judy leave and the toy maker shows her Mr. Punches, who in her father's voice says,
So long, short stuff.
She is reunited with Teddy and she gives him to the toy maker to spend time with the dolls. We then see dolls of all the deceased guests, including the hitchhikers, the stepmom, and Mr. Punches.
The killer doll!
I have included an affiliate link to purchase a copy of the full movie in the description below. By using the link, you are not only helping to keep this channel alive, but you can also sleep better knowing that you have made a donation to the Positively Perfect Animal Shelter via the Amazon Smile charity program. So what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting
See you
for?
soon.